Hey everybody, Chris and Bob got another quick pick for you today. Hey Chris, good to see you.
What's happening? What's happening?
And here we are once again, right? We've been circling this drain for a while now.
Hey, but the first thing we should say is we told you so, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, you brought that up. I mean,
yeah.
we started talking about this months ago,
Yes.
and I mean, it really did not need a crystal ball.
No, no,
And
no.
and Bob didn't need to go to some Louisiana witch doctor to
That's
figure
right. There
this
was no
one out,
voodoo.
man. There's
There's
no
no voodoo
voodoo in this one, man.
necessary on this
I mean,
whatsoever,
but
right?
holy moly, man! I mean,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
keep it's the story that keeps going.
yeah. It's a gift that keeps on giving, like, lots of things. So yeah, this is so what we're talking about is, the story this week about Cisco actually being caught up in this npm Trivy TeamPCP exploit or process or
And supply
cybersecurity
chain
attack,
attack. Yeah.
supply chain tech. Yeah, and so, and we're not talking about Cisco, that you fry shit in. We're talking about
Not Cisco. Yeah,
Cisco,
yeah, or Cisco Foods. Yeah, no,
yeah, our
no.
Cisco
We're gonna
foods. It's
talk about
not.
Cisco systems. That's
Yes,
right.
yes, the Cisco systems of which there's a huge percentage of infrastructure in the world that uses Cisco systems, and that's what the story was about this week, was about them getting caught up in this. And I would love to tell you that it was some sort of new angle or something novel than what we've been talking about now for weeks. It bloody well wasn't, dude. This is just them. Even though, as Chris just put it, we just, I know it's just Chris and Bob Miller, who they know, who the hell cares. But look, we're not the only people who've been talking about this for months, right? So now I will say that when we started looking at it in November, nobody was saying a damn thing about it. That was the reason we did that one. Yeah. Yeah, because everybody's like, it was like the entire world was asleep at the wheel, right? It's like, Jesus Christ, do you not understand what's happening here? They got into 800 and something modules and 57,000 repositories, and nobody's saying anything about it. And here we are, right? Now we're 5 months away from that. And Cisco gets their ass kneecapped with the same exact freaking process. I mean, it's like nobody was paying attention and still not paying attention. Hell, we talked about it in the cyber call a little bit this week, right? I mean, it's been in multiple cyber calls from
Yeah, I just don't. Even outside of that, I mean, I
yeah.
still don't.
There's not nearly the recognition of this problem. Period. Right.
Yeah, I just don't. Like, I don't get how this did not the whole thing from the get go. Like, think about the fact that they use Trivy for an
Yeah.
example, right?
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
your Cisco. That's just the one part of it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and you have to think about that. And then you think about, oh, this thing happens. I mean, it just seems like, knowing how big they are, how many, and we're trying to figure out the precise number of how many security people they have that's internal to just watch the Cisco stuff. And I think that they said 5% is your typical number. So let's just say there's 3,000 people on a conservative number. I mean, there's just too many things to say, how did this get missed this many times? And missed many different ways, right? And then for those people that don't know Trivy, I mean, you're like, oh, well, no, it's a well-known thing. So even like Cisco used it, and it was part of Cisco's workflow.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's part of I mean, it's part of the majority of CI/CD, code integration, code deployment processes. I mean, it's like anything else. It's like a well-known tool that everybody uses. Postman, another example of something that everybody uses to look at, webhook traffic back and forth. It's just like an off-the-shelf thing that everybody's been using forever. You know what I mean? But that, to your point, that we've been talking about this, and that tool was called out. Now, before then, it was the original transgression was using truffle hog. If people don't remember what that is, but it basically serves the same function. It looks through your code and your binaries to make sure that you didn't expose, clear text secrets or credentials or anything. That's what it does. It's used to validate code to make sure that you haven't left something really that should not be left in the open. It validates the fact that you haven't done that, and Trivy's that tool. That's just another one of the tools, and a well-known one. Clearly, if Cisco and them are using it for their CI/CD workflows, then there you go, right? So that's what it is. And what's interesting about this damn thing is he say, oh, well, Cisco got hit. I mean, how bad could it be? They got into 300 plus GitHub repos that were Cisco
Yeah.
specific,
Code.
right?
Yeah.
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 And they basically, they downloaded code. They took code base and any of the secrets and or credentials that they could scrape in the process. I mean,
Yeah. And
they
then they
didn't.
turn, and it's not completely verified but they're, use that to then potentially get into Salesforce and grab data from there somehow, some way. So, I mean, again, this is one of those things where we talked about in the past is it's not like, hey, I got some creds, I'm going to go in, steal some files and get out. I mean, these guys, they go in, they steal so much stuff that they have so many options to do things with.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You got
Yeah.
source code. Boy, as a threat actor, well, man, there's all sorts of stuff I can do with the source code. I got tokens in
Yeah.
the cloud environments. I can go either use those cloud environments for my own good, for my own purposes, or I can go take stuff out of those cloud environments. I mean, the list goes on and on and on.
Yeah. API keys, because as I can tell you right now, very few companies, very small percentage rotate API keys on a regular basis, even though in some cases those are privileged communications, right? And they run in privileged mode. Anything that's interfacing with another ecosystem through an API, typically those run at system level privilege because that's just what they are, right? I mean, that's how they operate. So, API keys, tokens, secrets, any of that stuff is usable. So.
And this comes back to that, that vendor management deal. Like, hey, you're a Cisco user. You had no idea to ask Cisco questions about their development life cycle and to ask, like all that stuff. So this is where you can only, like, I can only imagine going forward being audited by an IT auditor and they go down this path and you're like, come on, man, you got to be realistic here. I mean, and then if you're like a small, medium-sized business, you don't even have the ability to even say, hey, I want to really quiz the heck out of somebody at Cisco and find out exactly how this stuff works. No one's going to do that. As an enterprise, maybe you got to be a big dog to even
Yeah.
get to this level of asking about processes within Cisco to be comfortable with them. But I mean, this is Cisco. I mean, it's like, on the same par as
Yeah.
IBM or Microsoft. I mean, they're that big, and you're
Well, yeah.
expecting them not to do stuff like this.
Well, like Ford and Chevy in the automobile industry, right? I mean, they're
Yeah,
just
yeah.
kind of a core. You see them everywhere, right? Same sort of thing.
And they've been around forever.
Yeah, been around
And
forever.
yeah, and the crazy thing is like they're like Cisco products have always been known to be extremely reliable, almost to in a bad way. When we get involved in incident response stuff, sometimes you'll still see some old piece of Cisco gear, and they didn't get rid of it because it's still running. So like they're a known like entity, U.S. based company that you should say, hey, how this happened. And then I think about the flip side of things and see, well, I mean, if Cisco can't do anything about it, then why should I worry about security? I mean, that's not the point here. The point here is that there definitely was plenty of red flags, and something happened. And you got to
Yeah.
figure it out.
By the way, it's bullshit because they could have.
Yeah,
I mean, the prescription about how to counter this has been known for months.
yeah.
So they could have.
And
It's
that's
not.
not rocket science either, right?
No,
Yeah, they could
no, it's
have. Yeah.
rotate your damn credentials. You know what I
And
mean? Rotate your fucking credentials. That'll help.
and if you even gave them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, you say, okay, they might have at least been able to reduce the impact a bit. But I mean, it didn't sound like it's too little, too late by that time.
Yeah, because I mean, what the bad guys basically did is they just went and stole GitHub tokens and AWS keys. I mean, that's what they did, and then they cloned 300 plus internal code repositories. They cloned them. That means they have copies of what was in those code repositories.
And
And
there's no finding those.
yeah,
They're
and by the
gone.
way, yeah, we don't know what that inventory really was, but we all know that a lot of the cybersecurity infrastructure is carried by these major vendors, right? So Cisco firewalls, Cisco VPN controllers, Cisco routers, Cisco switches. If any of those operating systems were some of the repositories that got their hands on, the bad guys basically have the blueprints to the hardware that we use to try and control their ability to attack, right? I mean, we don't know the full inventory of this, but I mean, it was 300 repositories. I doubt they got the refreshments and decorations application that Cisco wrote. I'm pretty sure these were some pretty serious ass code bases that they were cloning, right? So it just opens the door up. Chris, you remember when Microsoft? It was last year sometime when Microsoft lost their code base, right? It got picked off. The code base to the operating systems got picked off. So this is now the code bases to the infrastructure pieces that tie everything together. But that's really what happened is they got their AWS keys and then they cloned, like I said, 300 plus repositories, basically
Yeah,
getting
I think what's
copies of the code.
also interesting about this is read through our stuff is, I mean, hey, look, this is an issue. They got to address this issue, all this kind of stuff, understand the impact, all that stuff. But this is potentially impact product releases
Yeah,
and stuff of that nature
sure.
because this occurred. So this has a huge ripple effect. It's not just say, hey, we had this little thing happen over in the corner. You guys go over and address this, get back with us while we all continue our work. That's not the way it works now. Now they got product release dates and all that kind of stuff that may slip, or they've already determined that they must slip. There's all sorts of downstream effects from this error.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you haven't seen the previous quick pick that we did, it was about this. The mechanism again, just to remind everybody, the mechanism that the bad guys got into the repos of the people who are own operate Trivy to begin with, and they basically poisoned one of the modules, one of the npm modules. Again, back to November's discussion about them getting into these Java libraries that basically made up how Trivy operates, and more or less what they did was made it was a stealth sort of an addition. So even though Trivy looks like it's working like it's supposed to and gives you all the same feedback that it would normally give you as you use it as a tool, in the background they're harvesting credentials and secrets and things, and then they're exfiltrating that, and it's basically grabbing them and getting them in the hands of the bad guys. That's what the quote Trivy part of this is, and really if you ask what happened there, again, you should go back and watch that other quick pick. But the people who have Trivy, who actually write and operate Trivy, they caught them getting into their repos pretty quickly, and they did rotate all their credentials except one. They
That's right.
forgot one system process, and that system process, had elevated operating privileges, and that's what they used to get into the development chain, modify the modules, and then basically do a force push that got everybody to download updates, and then they spread organically like that. And that's really how that. I mean, that same attack, nothing different. It just happened to Cisco. Even though we talked about this for the last few weeks, it just happened to Cisco. That's really what they did. And the same, by the way, again, if you guys are new to quick picks, I'll put all of the research material that we gathered. Chris and I use all the LLMs to go and scrape as many of the actual sources for this particular story. We get all that pulled together, and each LLM gives me an analysis report. We run all of those through, get an executive summary report, and we put that all out. I actually put them in a link that you can get in the article. This will be published on LinkedIn, and the video will be on YouTube, and they'll all be linked together on LinkedIn. But you can get all the way down to these core research files and download them yourself and take a look if you want to get more further into this. But I'm telling you right now, if you use any tools, like these tools have been compromised. Those are the ones we know that have been compromised today. But any tools that are using npm modules, if the authors of those tools are not overtly saying, hey, by the way, we use npm modules from a lot of open source, but we have evaluated them and we know for a fact that they're clean, then you should ask that question before you just willy-nilly let those tools keep operating. So,
No, I mean, and it makes you wonder, right? Because these are the big dogs. These are the ones that have the
yeah,
big spread. How many of the little, I don't want to call them onesie twosies, but you know what I mean, that we're not going to hear about, but that are going to have an impact, right? I mean, we're only again hearing the bigger stories out of this stuff, and for those of you that are interested in this, I mean, there continues to be more content and other stuff people putting out about this, because it is incredibly interesting, and again, it kind of comes down to process. It comes down to process,
it
and it
really is
comes
what it
down to
is.
just
Yeah.
whether that process was not as good as it should have been. There wasn't a review of it, whatever the case may be. But yeah, this is kind of an ugly one. But yeah, and like we said, we multiple LLMs are used, and in this particular case, I think a lot of them had
They were,
agreements on just
yeah,
about
they were in
everything.
alignment. Yeah,
Yeah,
this particular one, there's enough material out there now that it's starting to be, there's a lot of consensus between each one of these when they do the analysis. There's very few discrepancies between them anymore, because again, this has been going on now for a few weeks, and the amount of material out there that the LLMs are training up on has gotten to a point where the volume's high enough that they're starting to actually be, they're starting to point out the same issues and it being consistent across all of the analysis. Because again, you know how these work. These LLMs train from information that's available on the internet, and when the volume gets high enough, the probability of likelihood that these are correct goes up, right? I mean, it's just an
exactly right.
accuracy thing.
So it kind of came down to the level of detail for some of them,
But
but
that's really
yeah,
all. When you get right down to it, that's about it. So the who is affected, we can talk a little bit more about the how. The big deal for this, we've already talked about the fact 300 repos, yes. AWS keys, yes. What most people don't know is this really strikes the development workstations primarily. We mentioned this in the last quick pick. Developers are under attack right now. That whole ecosystem is under broad scale attack, just wholesale attack, because again, these are libraries and modules they've been using forever, and tools, off the shelf tools. These are not vulnerabilities. These are not flaws. These guys are living off the land in these tools, for the most part. The Trivy thing where they actually modified the working code of that, they did, but it looked like a legitimate executable because it was signed by the people who actually developed the code, right? It was in their
that's exactly
development
right.
chain.
It was,
Yeah,
yeah. It looked at,
yeah,
yeah. There's no way you could have picked it up. Now, even
nah,
you bring a good point. Even from a logging perspective,
that's right.
you wouldn't have known anything. It just looked like,
No,
hey, a regular
no.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
but
lot like the solar ones. It was a lot like the solar ones in that regard. That was the first one where these guys got into the development chain and supplemented their code into the development chain, but it was on the side where the vendors would regularly compile and release updates. It just got compiled into the normal compilation stream and got stamped and signed, by the people who own it, and therefore there's no way to pick it up on it. I mean, because it looked like a legitimate executable. It's coming from the manufacturer. How could it not be a legitimate executable, right?
it's security. It comes from a security company. It must be
Yeah,
secure, and it's
yeah,
for security. So yeah,
right.
exactly.
Yeah, so that's the deal. It gets into the workstations and basically turns them into a persistent backdoor. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. That's a big piece of, and then it starts doing, like I said, its function. It does its function. It's just got somebody hanging over its shoulder, taking notes the whole way and sending it somewhere else.
That's right.
And so that's really what's going on. So
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, that's all we got on
that's
this
it.
one. Let me
Yeah,
know
yeah.
if
I don't
we
think
have
it needs
another
any
one
more
next
than
week.
that. Yeah, go look. I mean, it's interesting as hell. Go look at the URL. Go look at the research. And by the way, let's just go ahead and say it, Chris. Ain't gonna be the last time we're gonna be freaking talking about this, dude. Because this is, I have the feeling this is going to go on this year. We're going to see, I don't know, that's probably what we ought to do. Start a pool, say how many incidents are we going to actually see
And we can
related
tie
to
back
this
to
one
this.
damn thing. Yeah, that
Exactly.
we can tie back to that GitHub repo,
That's a good point, man.
back in October, right? We should start a drinking pool or something,
Yeah,
that talks about how many times we're going to hear it. But I know we are not done talking about this shit by long shots.
yeah, I agree.
Just keep your eyes out, ears open, and leave us some comments. At any time you want to. We're always looking for people to give
Also
us
give us
information.
also give us as much credit for talking about this shit way before everybody else was. So
Yeah,
just
well,
remember
we did. We did.
that. Yeah.
That's legitimate. So I don't think that's bragging. I think that's
No, it's not
legitimate. We
bragging.
saw
That's
this
just
coming.
factual. That's right.
That's a fact. 100%. All right.
All right.
Thanks,
Thanks.
everybody. We'll see you next time.